If you've tuned in for roughly 12 minutes of pure unadulterated Triumph simping, that you will not be disappointed. Today I'm going to give you a deep dive on the differences between a Speed Triple 1200RR and a Daytona 675R. How do I know the differences? Well, I have owned 4 Daytona 675Rs and I spent a lot of time with our giveaway Speed Triple 1200RR here, and I want to elucidate you guys to all the differences between the two motorcycles. Let's get started with the similarities. Alright folks, so the Speed Triple 1200RR is obviously a pretty different motorcycle from the Daytona 675R, but I want to tell you that the riding experience is actually surprisingly similar between the two. Now, let's start off by talking about the frame on this motorcycle. This frame has nothing in common with the Daytona frame, kind of a first for Triumph. They usually wheel out the Daytona frame anytime they need a sport bike. See all these street triple lineups, those are all basically Daytona frames, but this has a bespoke Speed Triple frame. You can see that here. The big kind of pseudo-tubular member here, this all right here, the single-sided swing arm. The execution of this frame is very different than the Daytona 675R. It's obviously to accommodate a much larger engine and a bespoke engine for this frame. This is the 1200cc or 1168cc engine, making 175 horsepower and 80-something foot-pounds of torque. This is a powerhouse of an engine that obviously makes a lot more mid-range power than top-end power like the Daytona would. Now, pulling all that together, you look at an engine that makes all that power, you look at a frame that's really different, you would think that they'd have totally different riding characteristics. But as I said, the Daytona feels very similar to this thing on track. I took this thing out to Eagles Canyon Raceway and ripped a bunch of laps on it, and overall, compared to the Daytona, it's a much more agreeable motorcycle. The Ergonomics package makes it so that you can actually ride this thing for at least 20 laps on track, whereas the Daytona is much more aggressive. You have really high pegs, really aggressive, tiny sport bike thing, but this thing still evokes the feelings of Daytonas of past. Now, going back to the engine over here, the engine features a very, very pronounced torque punch in the middle. Now, the Daytona has a very linear power band, but this thing's actually going to come across much more linear in the mid-range than the overall kind of top-end power that the Daytona has. That means that this bike doesn't really have the kind of over-rev that you would expect from a sport bike on track. You can't really let the revs sit a little bit higher and get a little bit of over-rev when you're trailing into corners. You have to plan your exits a little bit more, but it's got great mid-range grunt off the apex. You don't need to downshift very much. You can actually get on the gas and really power out of this thing, which makes it a little bit different from a traditional super sport motorcycle. But again, on the road, out of the cockpit, as a guy who did probably about 30,000 miles on a stock 675R for street duty and kind of average squidding stuff, the view out of the cockpit of this thing really evokes the Daytona vibe to me. The kind of white fairings, the carbon fiber, the overall fit and finish of it just reminds me so much of doing all my dumb street squidding stuff that I did on the Daytona. But there's more to talk about these two machines. All right, folks, clearly some of you haven't understood yet that you need to get yourself clean. So we're actually gonna do a demonstration here with our Manscaped products. Now listen, you start off in the shower, go for the shampoo, right? Go for right there, get yourself some shampoo, boom, work that in there nice and good. Work that in there. You get yourself the body wash, boom, body wash, you're looking so clean, you're looking so fresh. You gotta make sure to be nice and fresh and clean. Then finish it up with some hydration. Hydrate your body, feels so good. Yum, 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 that feels nice. But you're gonna wanna make sure that you're protected for the whole day. Make sure you get some nice deodorant on there too. Deodorize your body. We're talking your balls. Your armpits. Hell, even the back of your neck. Who knows where you're gonna do with that deodorant. Finally, wrap it up with some lip balm. Just do nice and clean. Nice and clean. Make sure you don't got those grubby little lips. And then look at that. Beautiful. You're looking so fresh. You're looking so clean. Hit the link down below and get yourself 20% off automatically added to your order and free shipping on all these amazing new Manscaped products. Don't actually do that. It's not good. Now I mentioned the two bikes accomplish the same feeling, but from two very different places. One of the very different places that this motorcycle has over the Daytona is the throttle feel. Now this motorcycle obviously is much more modern than the 675R. That motorcycle actually features a cable throttle. This actually has a throttle by wire, meaning that it's all computer controlled and all that good stuff. So the initial pickup off the throttle, off an apex, actually going stop and go traffic is pretty different than the kind of Daytonas of yesteryear. This motorcycle has a much more kind of electronically limited, controlled kind of throttle feeling. It doesn't have that kind of just visceral gut punch of a cable actuated throttle. The components on this bike are a lot more fresh and new too. You have from the factory this MCS Brembo master cylinder that's a lot nicer than the stock master cylinder on the Daytona. My race bike has an upgraded RCS 19 because I couldn't stand the old master cylinder on that bike. It's got the Brembo style limit calipers too, which are very different. And of course, the crown jewel of this motorcycle, the electronically controlled Öhlins suspension. That makes a really big difference on this motorcycle over the Daytona. Now, this suspension package, you can literally go on track and just set it and forget it. Put in your suspension setting, set it to track mode, and it's literally about as good as it's gonna get. Whereas on the old Daytonas, you had to bring out the little hex key and the spanners, get your preload all dialed in. The net result is basically the same. Once you set up your suspension, it's good to go. This is just a more dynamic system that will allow you to have kind of easygoing road duty or track duty depending on what you're doing with it. And that kind of brings me to my last point, is that between the two motorcycles, this is a much more flexible package. The Daytona is an out-and-out race bike. Even among the 600s, that bike is ridiculously aggressive, ridiculously sharp-pointed, and meant to do one thing, and that's rail laps around a racetrack, which is all I do with my motorcycle. But this bike over here, it's much more flattering and gentle to ride. If you want to take it on track, oh my God, it really just does the business like you wouldn't believe. I was shredding laps on this thing, having so much fun with it. But, this is a date night motorcycle too. You could put somebody on the back of it, ostensibly. I see some passenger pegs, but I don't see a passenger seat, so you could theoretically put a passenger on it. But really, this is a bike you'd want to take to bike night. You could take this thing out, show it off, flex with it, because it's such a beautiful piece of engineering that you could really have so much fun with showing off to all of your buddies. This motorcycle is a really comprehensive package over the Daytona. It is not as laser focused as a race machine as those bikes are. And honestly, if it were my money nowadays, if I didn't have a fully prepped and built race bike, I'd probably get something like this. This thing is super confidence inspiring and great around a racetrack, but at the same time, you could still enjoy it every day on the street as a streetable motorcycle that you want to, kind of go around your twisty roads and have fun and do the whole sport bike thing. This is a bike that you could really kind of do the business with. So between the Daytona and the Speed Triple, you got to remember that obviously massive engine, different frame, different suspension, slightly different ergonomics, but still somehow Triumph has imbued that Daytona DNA in here. And for me, as a dyed-in-the-wool Daytona simp, when I sit on this thing and I look out of the dash and I see the gold capped Öhlins and the blue right here and the dash and the carbon fiber and the white fairings, it still kind of feels like a big Daytona to me. So what do you guys think about the differences between the Speed Triple 1200RR and the Daytona? Let me know in the comments down below. And thanks so much for Manscaped for supporting this video. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Keep watching, Gaming Noob!